Hello, welcome back to everyone that's tuned into our channel, American Ultra Screw. Here we are today to bring to you guys another top 10 video. It's been a while. Here I am joined by Braden, Shrey, and Jeff. Thank you guys for being here. We're bringing to you a top 10 most underrated USMNT players, American players. They can be out of the picture for now of the USMNT. Just getting started in the 10th place, I have Knight Pickering, the 18-year-old, plays for Memphis 901. I think he's a talent to watch. He has some odd moments, bad decision making at times, but he's explosive and a good finisher. He has racked up 6 goals, 5 assists. That's pretty decent for an 18-year-old. So there's a lot for him in the future. All right, Braden, who do you have opening up your top 10?
Yeah, as you can see in my background, I've gone for Jack DeVries, the Venezia player. He was on loan at Kotka in Finland this past season, and he was one of their best players, and they actually haven't won since he left, so there's that. I don't think anyone really pays attention to him or even knows who he is in the USMNT sphere, except for like maybe diehard Union fans like myself or Venezia fans like Yuri. And I think he should get a little bit more attention. I think he's a promising young winger.
Yeah, came on in the Venezia preseason friendly against Genoa too, so that's nice. Maybe he's going to have more of a role this season. Shrey, who do you have opening up your top 10?
There's absolutely no Charlotte FC bias here, but I have Brian Romero, the 2006 born 17-year-old. Now, you may hate on me, but listen, his first professional game, he played against Chelsea, won the penalty, right? Then Charlotte FC equalized, and they ended up beating Chelsea. So, sorry, Jeff, but Charlotte FC's clear. Now, since that hasn't been that great since that game versus Chelsea, but I mean, look, he just turned 17. He's playing in MLS next, and he's not doing that bad. Honestly, if he didn't play for Charlotte FC, he would not make my top 10. But look, he's a promising player. He's 17, and look.
Oh yeah, and also not bad for an Edgar. For an Edgar, that is actually great what he's doing.
Jeff, who do you have in 10th place?
This is recently a player that's impressed in Gold Cup, probably the most impressive one. A little bit of NYCFC bias here, but James Sands. I have James Sands at number 10 for my most underrated. When you look at how he progressed with NYCFC before, he was always solid whenever he played for them. In the 2021 Gold Cup, he was actually one of the key players that helped us win the Gold Cup. He went to Rangers. We obviously know that it didn't work out there. Currently, he's doing better than he ever did at Rangers, and this past Gold Cup, the players to stand out in this Gold Cup, and he did, All
right, Jeff spoke about a defensive midfielder. I'll speak about one as well. 9th place, I have Ethan Kohler. Really promising defensive midfielder. Played in the USL. Actually just made the bench, but had a debut in the US Open Cup, and he got an assist. It was against a really weak team, I can't recall, but the kid has looked really impressive. When he was at the San Jose Earthquakes Academy, he played really well. I actually got the opportunity to watch him live once, so there's a little bit of bias there, regional bias, but I think he is a player in a position that we really lack depth in the USMNT main roster, and considering the amount of hype that we put around some of our youngsters, I think he's gone under the radar, so he's underrated in my opinion. Braden, who's your next player?
So number 9, I'm going to go for a goalkeeper, Diego Cochin at Barcelona. It's a little bit scary that I'm including players younger than me on this list, but yeah, the Miami-born player has been coming up through La Masia. He signed his first professional contract with Barcelona, one of the biggest clubs in the world, as we all know, last year in March, and he has been recently training this summer with the first team, which as a 17-year-old goalkeeper is very promising. Obviously, he's not going to be part of the first team, but as a 17-year-old, to be one of the few players from their second team who got called up to train with the first team for preseason, it's a really good sign. He could definitely challenge for a number 1 spot in a couple of years.
We get a little bit lost just talking about Gaga and don't even notice that we have other youngsters that are promising. Even that kid that trained with the main roster in LA. Shrey, who's your 9th place?
Yeah, I actually have another goalkeeper, but it's not Cochin. It's actually Roman Solentano. He's underrated. He's 22 years old. He's starting for Cincy are top of the table. And look, he has had some iffy moments, but in general, I think he's been pretty solid. He's 22 years old. I think he has potential to be like a future depth piece player. He's 22. He's an established MLS keeper.
That's really young for a goalkeeper. Jeff, who do you have?
The player that I have next, he's a player that I love to mention a lot. He's a player that's getting interest in Europe, and he's one of the best teenagers in the league. It's Brian Gutierrez at number 9 for me. This kid, he is very, very technical, a very good playmaker, and he's very underrated as a U20 player, definitely. He's established himself as a starter with Chicago for over 2 seasons now. He's currently playing really well. 2 goals and like 5 assists. That's pretty good. 2 goals and 6 assists, actually. And he's the highest scoring teenager in the league right now. And with the U20 national team, he's actually, every time he's played, he's been really good.
All right, that's fair. 8th place. I have Celentano as well, but I definitely think he should have gotten a look for Gold Cup, and I think that considering his age and how well he has established himself, I'll put him in 8th. Look at Matt Turner, what happened in his career at what stages. I think Celentano goes under the radar as underrated. Braden, who's your pick?
Yeah, I do agree that he should have gotten a look in over Sean Johnson, but some of the mistakes he's made this season in MLS have been unforgivable for me. But he's still young. He's had time to grow. And for my number 8, I'm going to go for Austin Trusty. He's had a meteoric rise coming through MLS, the Union Academy, of course. Went to Rapids and was bought by Arsenal, which was something that I don't think anyone saw coming. It's probably because Rapids and Arsenal both have the same owner. I mean, he's done well in England. He had a loan at Birmingham City this past season and was their fans player of the season. He's absolutely adored there. And he's been playing regularly for Arsenal in preseason. I don't expect him to stay. He's had interest from Birmingham, Ipswich, and Rangers, 3 pretty solid teams around the UK. And yeah, I would put him a little bit higher, but I think our fan base has caught on a little bit to how good he is now, and to the point where he's actually been included in the A team for the past couple rosters.
Shrey, 8th place. Who do you have?
Yeah, this is actually pretty controversial, but I'm having Jesus Ferreira in here. Now that's just because like so much of our fan base is ready to write him off, and he's 22 years old. He's been doing really well in MLS, and look, a lot of people are gonna put hate on him, but look,
I'm already hating on you for saying him in 8th place.
We wouldn't have made it to extra time to Panama if it wasn't for him. A pretty good Gold Cup. Like the Panama game wasn't that great, but our entire team wasn't that great. He's still really young. He can still make the jump to Europe. I just say don't write him off, and just because of how much hate he gets, I'm saying he's underrated.
All right, that's fair, Shrey. I think Ferreira would definitely top this video if we were talking about the 10 most overhated players. But yeah, I agree with you. He's still only young. He just needs to step up and challenge himself going to Europe. Jeff, who do you have in 8th place?
I have Diego Luna. I have Diego Luna number 8th. But his rise over the past 2 years, it's been really impressive to say the least. The Barca Residency Academy, then making the jump to USL, signing with El Paso Locomotive, which he became a fan favorite, and he established himself as one of the top players in the USL. And then with the USU20, he became one of our most important players. He was a standout in the U20 championship. So now this season, he's earning minutes and scoring. To do all of that at just 19, being dubbed overweight, which he actually is overweight to say the least. Just look at him. He looks like he's 30 years old with those tats as well. He looks like a Mexican uncle.
I mean, that's a little bit of a roast session there on Moon Boy. But going from a player, I mean, shout out to Salt Lake for rewarding him with minutes. The next player, my 7th pick, hasn't really been rewarded, but he did get a move. Brendan Craig, I think he was really impressive in the U20s World Cup. And I'm going to say it now, he's better than Jalen Neal. Jalen Neal's getting all this hype. I don't hate on Jalen Neal. I think he's a good player, but Brendan Craig, if you look at his performances, he is definitely better. He doesn't get the minutes because his club's a little bit better than the Galaxy, so that's why. But I do think he's one of the highest ceiling center backs that we have in our roster for the future. Braden, who do you have?
At number 7, I'm going to go for another center back, also defensive midfielder, Leonard Maloney, the German-born U.S. international. Came up through youth academies in Germany with Union Berlin, played a lot for Borussia Dortmund's second team, even played 2 games for the main team before getting a move to Heidenheim in the second tier last season, and he was a key player for them in their promotion up to the Bundesliga. And I'm really looking forward to see how he does in the Bundesliga, because I think he's another player who hasn't gotten any attention really from our fan base, but the fact that he'll be in the top tier in Germany this next season, I think will put him on the radar for some people, and maybe he'll even get a call up, who knows.
All right, straight 7th place.
Yeah, I have a pretty old and experienced player. It's John Brooks, which is a bit surprising, but look, his move to Benfica was horrible. I mean, it was a really bad decision. But since then, he's been doing pretty well. He's established himself as a starter, and he'll be starting this upcoming season for Hoffenheim. And look, him and Craig seem to have something going on, and which is why he's not getting called up. But regardless, I think he's someone that should have at least been on the Gold Cup if possible, and he should definitely be involved with the national team. Well, he's not going to be since Craig's back, but he should be, in my opinion. And yeah, he's 30 years old, so he's in his prime for a center back. And yeah, he's gonna be starting in the Bundesliga. So yeah, I have John Brooks.
He could be their Tim Ream of 26. It looks unlikely with who we have in charge now. Jeff, who's your pick? 7th place.
I got yet another U20 player. He'll soon be a senior team player, in my opinion. It's Kevin Paredes, the Wolfsburg player. He is incredibly technical, very good on the ball, has a lot of pace, versatile in my opinion, and yeah, his rise has been truly something. As a Virginia native, myself, it's good, to see him in Europe, being one of our top prospects by far, in my opinion. His potential is really, really high. Moved to Wolfsburg. At first, he almost didn't play until like the end of the season, starting to get minutes.
All right, 6th place, just missing out on my top 5. I have Joni Kurt. No, I'm just kidding. I have Ethan Horvath, our goalkeeper. I think he's really underrated. There's a rumor for him to go to Rangers, which I think it's a good move. They need a goalkeeper now, and I just think he's really underrated, especially considering the things that he has done for us in the past and his age. I think he'll be involved in 26. Braden, who do you have just missing out on your top 5?
This is going to be a huge shocker, but another Union product. It's Mark McKenzie, the center back playing for Genk now in Belgium. He's established himself as one of, if not the best defenders in the Belgian Pro League. I think he's been written off by a lot of our fan base just because in the 2021 Nations League final against Mexico, he did make that mistake early on that led to Mexico's first goal, which, I mean, I'm not defending that at all. I mean, it was a horrible mistake, but he was young and he's grown as a player immensely. And I actually remember the first couple of times I saw him play for the Union, I thought he was absolutely horrible. So tremendous growth, and he's proven that the past couple of seasons.
But McKenzie, I think 2 seasons max, he will be in the top 5 league. Shrey, who do you have in 6th place?
Yeah, so just missing out on my top 5, I have Josh Sargent. I think he had a pretty underrated season at Norwich, and I think people are underrating him, especially because we have Balogun now. And look, Balogun's our number 1. Like, I'm not disputing that, but look, if Pepe has a tough season or goes down injured, or even if Balogun goes down injured, like, Sargent will have to step up, be shifted out wide. He'd be in the middle sometimes. With Pukki now gone to MLS, he'll definitely start for Norwich, and I'm honestly expecting him to score like 20 goals next season. And yeah, I think Sargent is pretty underrated. And yeah, you heard it first here, Sargent is scoring 20 goals in the championship this year.
That would be nice to see happen. Jeff, who do you have?
For my player that I'm talking about right now is Malik Tillman. I have Malik Tillman on this list. He's had a very good season with Rangers. With the national team, he hasn't been getting looked at, and in my opinion, he deserved to be on the Nations League roster. I just really want to see him on the national team because I feel like he offers, versatility as a 10, as a winger. You can even play him as a false 9 as well. A very solid player. He's very underrated, and yeah, I hope to see him, get a chance in the September friendlies.
I mean, those transitions would be nice to introduce some players that are in the fringe, and I'm going for a player like that, but he's already been mentioned before in this video, Leonard Maloney, for the same reasons that Braden listed. I think he's criminally underrated by our fan base, and more than 50% of them don't even know who the guy is at this point or completely forgot about him. So for that reason, going for Leonard Maloney, and I back him to actually challenge for a spot in the roster in the future. Braden, opening up your top 5, who do you have?
Yeah, so Jeff spoke about Malik Tillman as a potential false 9, and for my number 5, I'm going to go for a player who absolutely ran the show as a false 9 for the U20 team in the CONCACAF Championships in the summer of 2022. It's Paxton Aronson, the top scorer from that tournament, the Golden Ball winner as well, and far and away, I think, our best U20 talent. The fact that he wasn't released by Frankfurt also shows a lot. I mean, to jump from being a fringe player with the Union and MLS to being basically the same role, honestly, with a Bundesliga team is completely unexpected, and it just shows how much growth he's had as a player. And the fact that they didn't release him for the U20 World Cup also shows how valued he is by them. And I think he's underrated mainly because he wasn't in the Gold Cup preliminary roster. I think it would have been perfect for the Gold Cup, get some run-ins with the senior team, get some experience at that kind of level. But the fact that he wasn't included just shows how unserious the Federation was about that tournament, unfortunately.
Trey, who do you have opening up your top 5?
Yeah, so in 5th, I have Chris Brady, the starting goalkeeper for the Chicago Fire. He's the same age as Kaga, but for some reason, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Kaga, but for some reason, he's not getting nearly the amount of hype that Kaga was. Like, when Kaga was in Chicago, he was getting hyped up so much, and a lot of that has to do with the transfer rumors. But, yeah, I have not heard, that much about Brady, and he's been a locked-in starter for Chicago Fire. And just to show how much Chicago Fire rate him, they didn't let him go to the U20 World Cup, or they didn't let him go to the Gold Cup. So that just shows how much of a vital piece he is for that team. Hopefully, he's part of the Olympics next year. I really rate Chris Brady highly.
All right, Jeff.
Oh man, you're gonna love me for mentioning him. And wow, he's incredibly underrated in my opinion. It's Tanner Tessman. I have Tanner Tessman in this list. Yeah. So yeah. Oh man, when he first arrived at Venezia, I remember everyone hyping up Busio, saying, "Oh my God, he's gonna be so good with Venezia." Oh, Tessman's there too. Oh yeah, that's fine. That's all right. 2 years later, the tables have turned. Tessman is in Busio's shoes now as a top player of Venezia, locked-in starter. It's absolutely insane that Busio still made the Gold Cup over Tessman. That's got to be a crime. Is that a crime? It's got to be a crime. You know, that's illegal. The way I see him play, he can actually be on this roster. He can be in this team. He can even challenge for potentially as a starter if he keeps this form up. I hope to see him get a transfer to Serie A. I feel like he's too good for Serie B.
Yeah, I think that's definitely happening. He has a lot of options, but like some players like even Balogun, the players that have a lot of options, they need to wait out and choose the best move. All right, in 4th place, I have Matthew Corcoran, the 17-year-old starter for the Birmingham Legion. I think he's really good. I happened to watch the Legion's last 2 matches, and this kid is so good. I watched the full game where he provided an assist. Granted, it was from a corner, but before the corner, he almost scored a banger. I think he's really good, and again, just on the label underrated, I put him there in the top 5 because our fan base, again, is really quick to put these players on a pedestal, and then here we have a 17-year-old, really creative player, and with a brilliant touch and technique, fast as well, starting for the USL Championship, and nobody really talks about him, so I'm going to put him there. Braden, who do you have in 4th place?
Yeah, I think it can be a blessing in disguise not getting the attention because, less pressure can lead you to have better results for some players. But for my number 4, I'm going to go for the player that Jeff just mentioned, Tanner Tessman, the defensive midfielder of Venezia. And like Jeff said, I mean, when he went there with Busio, he was an afterthought. I mean, Busio had all the hype. He was a very good player at Sporting KC, but the roles have completely been reversed, and Tessman's now on the verge of a move to Serie A, which is big because it's going to get him more attention from the USMNT fans and the coaching staff as well, because I think we've seen with some other players on this list, like Leonard Maloney maybe, that the coaching staff and the federation don't seem to value players who are in the second tier of whatever league they're in, which is a shame because they can produce some ballers. And hopefully Tessman can lock up a starting role in Serie A next year.
Shrey, who do you have in fourth place?
Yeah, in fourth place, I have Brandon Craig. You already mentioned him, Yuri. The reason he's underrated is like a lot of people are hyping up Jalen Neal, deservedly. But if you look at the Revelations Cup, if you look at past youth tournaments, I think it's safe to say that Craig was on his level, or if not better. Now he's at Austin, and he just got there. I know he's not playing so far, but hopefully his minutes go up soon.
Heads up, there may be some Queens bias. It's my boy Jack McGlynn. Definitely a top prospect at the Union. Far better than Aronson, Sullivan, and Craig in terms of a talent. In terms of a talent, calm down, all right? I rate him higher than out of the four, just because of how good this kid is as a number 8 on the ball. You know, his distribution is top notch. His vision, his IQ, his control. You know, and even his shooting is pretty good. You know, he's a lock-in starter. How he played at the U20 World Cup. You know, it won't be long until he gets interest from teams abroad in Europe. In my opinion, he would fit perfectly with La Liga, with his style of play.
Yeah, you guys are lucky to be from places that actually produce talent. I don't think anyone's coming out of Camarillo, but yeah, I fell in love with Jack McGlynn during the U20s as well. What a great player. Now, starting my top 3, I have a guy, I don't even know if this is a hot take, but I think he's criminally underrated. Over when I went to Europe, I decided to go to a game of the Austrian League. Maurice Malone, a striker. I think he's really good. I know it's the Austrian League, but now he's back at Augsburg. And he actually scored a goal in the only match that he played for them in the FB Pokal last year. Got a loan, 8 goals, 9 assists, and he also created 3 penalties, which he didn't take. So really prolific, 22-year-old striker. I don't see anybody talking about him. And just watching him live, he was really good. And I saw the Augsburg coach saying that he's a pivotal part of their plans for this season. So it's nice to see. The guy has always delivered when he played. And then preseason, he played 2 days ago, scored 3 goals on a 5-1 win. Again, those mock friendlies. But I think he's a player we should be looking at for depth in the striking position. Maybe he has a breakthrough season. Brayden, who do you have in your top 3?
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to Jeff for mentioning my boy McGlynn. The only reason I didn't put him on my list is because I think the fan base has realized now how good he is, and I think there's been a lot of attention on him, a lot of shouts for him to be playing with the senior team, which are completely deserved, by the way, at least for the Gold Cup. Yeah, but for my number 3, I'm going to go for a player that a couple of you guys have mentioned already, Brandon Craig, another Union center back product. But I think this kid is underrated by everyone. I mean, like you guys have mentioned before, Jalen Neal's been getting all the hype because he was at the Gold Cup, which is cool. I like Jalen Neal. He played very well at the Gold Cup, but I still think Brandon Craig is better, like Yuri said. I think he has qualities that are very rare in the center back. The way he can play the ball, his passes are unreal. And I mean, he comes up and takes free kicks and corners. You never see that from a center back these days. And yeah, I mean, he's underrated by the fans. He's underrated by the coaches at Union and Austin as well, because for some reason, despite Austin having an absolutely shambolic back line, he still hasn't got any minutes, which is disgraceful, to be honest, and hopefully he'll start getting some minutes soon.
All right, Shrey, your 3rd place.
Yeah, I have Tanner Tessman in my 3rd place. Brayden and Jeff already mentioned him, so there's not much to add. But I mean, look, even when he was playing for Dallas, people were hating on him for no reason, which honestly I have no idea why. He goes to Venezia, and look, he's probably getting moved to Serie A now. Lazio, Atalanta are some teams that are being mentioned. Congrats on getting married as well. I wish he would have gotten married a little bit later so he could have been part of the Gold Cup, but congrats, and hopefully you join the channel soon. So Tanner Tessman, please join the channel. You're really underrated.
This guy right here, he's your biggest fan.
That's
yeah,
true,
this guy right
honest. I deserve a Tanner Tessman. I'll correct you guys. Tanner Tessman with a T. I deserve a Tanner Tessman jersey. But anyways, I agree with you guys. I mean, he's higher up on my list. It's no surprise. Jeff, who do you have opening up your top 3 most underrated players?
And for number 3, I'm gonna mention my boy Joe Scally. Joe Scally, in my opinion, he's very underrated. Yeah, he's actually underrated because I remember seeing like in some comment sections that once when Des got that red card suspension, that they were really worried that Joe Scally wouldn't play well against Canada, that Alfonso Davies is gonna smoke him, burn him alive, with that pace that he has. But no, he was actually, in my opinion, one of our man in matches in that game. Very reliable. He's versatile as well. He can play as a right back, left back, wing back, even right mid, even if you can try that out. It's all because of his composure as a defender, with how good he is defensively. I've even had him, being a starter over Dest at one point, just because of how bad Dest did at Milan. Maybe become a lock-in starter in the future.
Now, second place for me, no shockers here, no surprises. Tenor, Tasman with a Z. As a Venezia fan, relegation scrap, and Tenor steps up and locks in a starting spot. Finishes the season with the most goal contributions by a defensive midfielder in the entire Serie B. No cards, no yellow cards or red cards. Really good player, dispossessing. He's not that good at tackling and getting possession back, but he's really good at reading passes and intercepting. So there's a reason why Atalanta, Lazio, Bologna, they're all in for him, and Stuttgart as well. So, and Sheffield, for some reason, today I saw Sheffield as well. But the guy is attracting a lot of interest. That can only mean one thing. He had a really good season, and he's criminally underrated. People put Aiden Morris ahead of him. That shocks me. People put Johnny Cardozo ahead of him. That shocks me. But anyways, next season, he's going to have a breakthrough season, I'm pretty sure, or at least have more eyes towards him. So I put him in second place now. Braden, who do you have just missing out as the most underrated player in the US pool?
Yeah, for my number 2, I've gone for a player who's a little bit more experienced, but still hasn't really gotten much attention from US fans in the past. It's Lyndon Gooch, the wingback utility player. He can play all over. He can play outside mid, wingback, fullback. He's even slotted in as a third center back at times for Sunderland. And yeah, I think he's criminally underrated. He's been at England for basically his entire career, which might be part of the reason he hasn't been getting too much notice, because he's not from the MLS or wasn't raised in America. But yeah, he became a huge part of Sunderland's success this year in their first season back into the championship, making the playoffs, an incredible feat. And he actually became their captain towards the end of the season, which just shows his leadership qualities. And for a player at a position where I think we lack a lot of depth, I think it's criminal, honestly, that he hasn't gotten a look in.
Yeah, that's a great pick. Shrey, who do you have?
So my number 2 is an A-teamer. It's Luca De La Torre. And so his time at Heracles was really good. He goes to Celta Vigo. Doesn't start in the beginning, but throughout the season, as time goes by, he becomes a starter. And look, he hasn't been amazing, but I still think it's really impressive to go from his first season for playing for an absolutely horrific team in Heracles that got relegated in the Eredivisie to becoming a starter for Celta Vigo. I think that's really impressive. And look, with Musa moving to Milan, I really don't know how much game time he's going to get. I don't think that's the best move for Musa. McKennie with his weight problems. Luca De La Torre could, push, maybe become a starter. I don't think he will be a starter for us, but that certainly could happen. And I think he's just someone that goes unnoticed by the fan base.
All right, and he's also San Diego native, so he gets extra points for that. Jeff, who do you have?
My second most underrated player in this national team is Carter Vickers. Why I chose him as underrated? Well, because look at our depth for the center back position. We got Tim Ream, we got Chris Richards, we got Carter Vickers, of course, him as well. We got Miles Robinson. But out of those 4, people seem to put Carter Vickers behind. That sort of doesn't sit right with me, because with the past 2 seasons he had at Celtic, by far the best player in Scotland, the best centre back in Scotland, by far. He's even trusted enough to become captain of Scotland. And with and even during the rough times, like in the Champions League, he still stood out as one of Celtic's best players. And in my opinion, he deserves more recognition to be a contention for a starter in this team.
Jeff, how is Carter Vickers captain of Scotland?
I said Celtic.
No, you didn't. He's even captaining Scotland.
That's how good he is. He's captaining a country that he's not from.
I could have sworn I said Celtic.
He's just a monster. I mean, we're signing players from other national teams now. That's how good the U.S. are too.
I mean, that's been most of our strategy, to be fair.
Could have sworn I said Celtic.
He's a part-time Scotland player.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
funny. The fans will love it.
But can you believe it though? You know, he's from England. He's a U.S. player, and he's the captain of Scotland. Can you believe that?
Guy does everything. All right, talking about guys that do everything. My number one pick, Braden already mentioned him. I thought no one was going to mention him, but Lyndon Gooch. I mean, look at the position he plays. I mean, he plays everywhere. Plays as a right back, left wing back, right wing back. The guy is still young, 27 years old, established as a player at the very least in the championship level. No one has taken that backup spot for Jedi. He's alone right there in the fullback position on the left-hand side. So I have to go with Gooch, and he's a clutch player. Scored their goal that got them promoted back to the championship, became their captain. So he has to make my list as the most underrated player. Nobody ever talks about him. He's up there for a call-up. I don't know why he's not even on the short list. That's how criminally underrated he is now by USSF. Braden, who's your most underrated player?
A quick thank you for mentioning Gooch as well, because I feel like for the longest time I've been the only US fan to actually notice him. But for my number one, I'm going for another U20 player. I know we've mentioned a lot of them, and it's going to be Rukus Pukstas. He's broken into the first team at Hajduk Split in Croatia, and even with their U19 team, he led them to a shock final of the UEFA Youth Cup, which is completely unprecedented for a team from Croatia. And yeah, he scored the winner in their most recent match, a derby against Dinamo Zagreb. This kid is destined for big things. I mean, I think he definitely has a future with the senior team, and he should have been part of the Gold Cup. Yeah,
I mean, he could be incredibly special. But Shrey, who's your number one?
My most underrated player is Leonard Maloney. Braden and Yuri, you guys already mentioned him. And maybe there's some Dortmund bias in there, but I don't think there's that much, because I really think he is a very underrated player. And I don't think, honestly, you said 50% here. I don't think like 80% of our fan base knows who he is. Like, I'm not gonna lie. He spent 2 years at Dortmund, played pretty well for our second team, helped Dortmund the team win the league, third division. So he goes to Heidenheim, and he goes from a center back to a six now. And look, he played really well. He helped Heidenheim get promoted to the Bundesliga, and he's going to be a key part of Heidenheim's quest to not get relegated in the Bundesliga. And look, we've been looking for a backup for Tyler Adams for a long time. Maloney's been playing as a sixth now for Heidenheim. I mean, look, I think he's someone that can definitely be a part of our team in the future. And he's someone that's always wanted to represent the U.S. Even while he was at Dortmund, he was like, yeah, I want to play for the U.S., I want to play for Germany. But it's really good to see someone who's really passionate about playing for us.
Yeah, and people also sleep on his age. He's just 23. 23 for Maloney, 21 for Tesman. We lack sixths, but we never called him up, so that's a fair take, Shrey. No Dortmund bias in my opinion. That's completely forgiven. Jeff, who's your number one pick?
This may sound a bit odd to you guys. I mean, he's not really underrated, just to the fans. He's a contention to be a starter and challenging a certain new boy. My number one most underrated player right now is Ricardo Pepi, in my opinion. All right, it may seem crazy, saying he's fairly rated, but as soon as Balogun made the switch, people were already putting Pepi as a backup, or even saying, "Oh, Jesus Ferreira can challenge him too." Or I even saw some people say Sargent as well. And poor Pepi, he was just thrown away out of the conversation with the spectacular season he just had with Groningen. I definitely butchered the name, but who cares? A team that got relegated. This man scored 15 or 14 goals while being kicked out of Augsburg, and people were even calling him overrated or overhyped when he was at Augsburg. And we're talking about the same guy that his debut scored and assisted 2 goals against Honduras and scored a brace in Austin against Jamaica. And that's when people were really hyping him up. And then once he got the move to Augsburg from Dallas, after being called being nominated for best youngster in the MLS. People really forgot about him, and then as soon as he starts doing well with Groningen, they join back in. The hypocrisy is insane, and now he's at PSV. And in my opinion, he's very underrated for that. Just being not even being in contention to be a starter in many of the fans' opinions because of Balogun. Pepe's gonna challenge Balogun.
All right, that's fair, Jeff. Does he captain Netherlands though? No, I'm just kidding. Now, thank you guys. Thank you guys for being a part of the video. Thank you, Braden, Shrey, Jeff. And we appreciate all of the new subscribers. We have seen quite a few of you lately. Leave on the comments below your opinions about our top 10s and what other types of top 10 videos you guys would like to see in the future. Make sure you like us, subscribe, share with your friends, and turn on post notifications. We know that some of you probably have it on anyways. But thank you so much. We'll see you next time.